Welcome to the quiet, moonlit desert garden. Imagine for a moment that you are standing in a place where the world feels vast and exceptionally still. The sun has long since dipped below the horizon, leaving behind a sky of deep indigo, dusted with a million bright, shivering stars. Here, the air is crisp and cool, a gentle contrast to the intense heat that ruled the landscape just a few hours ago. In this garden, there are no lush, drooping willows or thirsty ferns. Instead, we are surrounded by the masters of patience, the succulents. These plants are the architects of survival, turning the harshness of the arid world into a kind of living art. They do not fight the desert. They have learned to speak its language, whispering a story of resilience that has lasted for millions of years. As we sit here in the cool shadows, watching the moonlight catch the silver edges of a nearby agave, I invite you to settle deeply into your space. If you find this stillness helpful for your rest tonight, you might consider subscribing to the channel or giving this video a like. It helps our quiet community grow, and it lets me know that these stories are reaching you as you drift off. But please, don't feel any pressure to move or click right now. Your only responsibility is to be comfortable. Take a slow, steady breath in and let it out. Feel the tension leaving your shoulders, your hands, your feet. Let yourself be as grounded as the ancient stones that line our garden path. You are safe here, tucked away from the noise of the world, in a place where life moves at the pace of a growing leaf. The desert is often misunderstood as a place of emptiness, but to the scientific eye, it is a place of incredible precision. Every curve of a cactus, every waxy leaf of an aloe is a response to the environment. These plants are not merely surviving, they are thriving in conditions that would wither almost any other form of life. To truly appreciate the beauty of these plants, we have to understand the geography that created them. We have to look at the very definition of an arid land, a place defined not just by what it has, but by what it lacks. The story of the succulent begins with the sky, the wind, and the peculiar way that water behaves when it is the most precious substance on earth. To understand the life of a succulent, we must first understand the beta-dry stage upon which it performs its slow-motion miracle. We must look at the mechanics of the arid landscape itself and the invisible forces that keep the rain away. To truly understand this moonlit garden, we must look at the invisible architecture of the air itself. In the world of science, a desert isn't defined by its heat or its sand, but by a very specific and delicate balance of moisture. For a landscape to be classified as truly arid, it must receive very little gift from the clouds, typically less than 10 inches or about 250 millimeters of rain in an entire year. To put that in perspective, imagine a single cup of water spread across a vast dining table. That is the meager portion the desert must survive on for months at a time. Some places, like the heart of the Sahara or the high plains of the Atacama, might go years or even decades without a single drop touching the dust. But the dryness isn't just about what fails to fall. It's about what the environment tries to take back. Scientists look at something called the evaporation-precipitation balance. In a lush forest, the rain falls and lingers, soaking deep into the earth. But here, in our desert garden, the sun is incredibly efficient. The potential evaporation, the amount of water the air is capable of pulling out of the ground, is often many times higher than the actual rainfall. If you were to place a bowl of water out under the midday sun here, the thirsty atmosphere would whisk it away into invisible vapor long before the soil could ever hope to drink it. This constant tug of war between the earth and the sky is what shapes every living thing we see around us. You might wonder why the clouds seem to avoid these stretches of land so intentionally. It isn't a matter of luck, but of global machinery. Most of the world's great deserts are found in two bands around the Earth, roughly 30 degrees north and south of the equator. This is where a phenomenon known as the Hadley cell completes its cycle. Warm, moist air rises at the equator, shedding its rain over tropical jungles. By the time that air travels to the desert latitudes, it has become cool and dry. As it sinks back toward the Earth, it warms up and compresses, creating massive, semi-permanent systems of high pressure. Think of these high-pressure systems as a heavy, invisible hand pressing down on the landscape. This pressure prevents moist air from rising and forming the clouds that bring rain. It creates a sky that is perpetually clear, a window into deep space that allows the sun's energy to pour down unfiltered during the day and allows the Earth's heat to escape just as quickly once the sun sets. This is why the desert feels so still and the stars look so sharp tonight. There is no thick blanket of humidity to blur the view or soften the temperature, because the water is so scarce and the air so dry. Iskua, or the very foundation of the garden, the soil, develops in a way that is entirely different from the dark, crumbly earth of a woodland. Without the constant rinsing of heavy rain, the minerals in the ground stay exactly where they are, creating a complex and ancient floor for our succulents to rest upon. As we move our gaze from the wide starlit sky down to the silver-gray ground beneath the plants, we begin to see that the dirt itself is a reservoir of history, waiting for the moment it can finally host a drop of life. To understand the succulent, we must look closer at this ground, at the grit, the dolt, and the hidden life that keeps the desert floor from blowing away in the wind. The ground beneath us is often called an aridisol, a word that simply means a soil of the dry lands. Or perhaps, in the rockier patches of our garden, we are standing on lithosols, the stone kales. In a typical garden, you might expect the earth to be dark, moist, and smelling of damp leaves. But here, the soil is a pale, sandy tapestry, ranging from sun-bleached cream to a deep, iron-rich ochre. It feels different, too, gritty and coarse. Because there is so little rain to wash the minerals away, this soil is incredibly rich in elements like phosphorus, potassium, and magnesium. It is a concentrated storehouse of the Earth's building blocks, held in a kind of suspended animation. One of the most curious features of this ground is the presence of calcium carbonate. Over thousands of years, as the tiny amounts of rainwater evaporate, they leave behind minerals that eventually harden into a layer called caliche. Sometimes this layer becomes as tough as concrete, a hidden white shelf just beneath the surface. It's a stubborn foundation that keeps the moisture from sinking too deep, holding it just where the plants can reach it. It acts as a floor for the garden, preventing the precious, rare water from disappearing into the deep belly of the earth. But you might wonder, If there are no falling leaves to rot and create rich compost, how do the plants find the nitrogen they need to grow? The answer is one of the desert's most beautiful secrets. If you look very closely at the patches of open ground between the plants, you might see a dark, crinkly crust that looks almost like burnt toast or dried mud. This is not dead earth. It is a biological soil crust. It is a living community of cyanobacteria, lichens, and mosses that have woven themselves into the very top layer of the sand. These tiny organisms are the guardians of the desert garden. When they are dry, they are dormant and fragile, but they act like a living glue, binding the loose grains of sand together so the wind cannot whisk them away. When a rare drop of rain falls, these crusts come to life, turning a subtle shade of green and working quietly to pull nitrogen from the air and tuck it into the soil. They are an invisible forest, barely a few millimeters thick, creating the fertility that allows everything else to exist. They stabilize the world beneath our feet, ensuring that the garden remains a place of stillness rather than a shifting sea of dust. It is from this ancient, mineral-rich floor that our main characters emerge. They are the masters of patience, the architects of water storage, and the true icons of the arid world. As we settle deeper into the quiet of the night, let's focus our attention on the most remarkable inhabitants of this garden, the succulents. They are the plants that have looked at the harsh, dry reality of the desert and found a way to turn it into a source of strength, transforming the scarcity of the environment into the lush, juicy abundance of their own bodies. To understand how they thrive where others wither, we must look at what it truly means to be a succulent. In the soft glow of the desert moon, the shapes of these plants stand out against the pale sand. They don't look like the delicate fluttering leaves of a forest or the swaying grasses of a meadow. Instead, they are sturdy, rounded, and remarkably still. This stillness comes from their very nature. As succulents, the word itself feels smooth and heavy on the tongue, and its origin is just as fluid. It comes from the Latin word succus, which means juice or sap. It describes a plant that is quite literally full of juice. When you look at a succulent, you are looking at a living vessel, a biological canteen that has mastered the art of holding on to life in its most liquid form. When we look at a succulent, we are looking at a master of storage and a champion of patience. In the formal world of botany, these plants are often categorized as xerophytes. It is a beautiful, ancient-sounding word derived from the Greek xeros, meaning dry, and phuton, meaning plant. A xerophyte is a plant that has evolved specifically to thrive in environments where water is a rare and precious gift. While a garden rose or a maple tree might begin to wilt and fade after just a few days without a drink, a succulent has built its entire physical existence around the idea of the long wait. It does not fear the dry weeks or the parched months because it carries its own ocean within its walls. It is interesting to realize that succulent isn't actually a formal family name in the way that oak or pine might be. Instead, it is a description of a survival strategy, a way of being. It is a path that many different and unrelated plant families have taken independently over millions of years of evolution. It is as if nature, when faced with the challenge of the desert in different parts of the world, came up with the same brilliant solution over and over again: the art of the reservoir. From the high, cold deserts of the Andes to the sun-scorched plains of Africa, plants have learned to thicken their tissues and guard their moisture. You might find yourself wondering, as you settle into the quiet of your own space, about the true difference between a cactus and a succulent. It is a common question, and the answer is simple and steady. All cacti are succulents, but not all succulents are cacti. Think of it like a large inclusive family. The succulent group is the broad community of all plants that store water in their fleshy leaves, stems, or roots. Cacti are just one specific, specialized branch of that family tree. They are mostly native to the Americas and are distinguished by their areoles, those small, often fuzzy, cushion-like bumps from which spines, hairs, and flowers grow. If a plant has areoles, it is a cactus. If it is simply thick, fleshy, and water-storing, without those specific structures, it is another kind of succulent, like a jade plant, an aloe, or a stone-mimicking lithops. But whether it is a towering cactus or a tiny, ground-hugging rosette, the goal remains the same: to transform the scarcity of the outside world into the abundance of the internal world. If you were to gently press your thumb against the leaf of a succulent, you would feel how firm, cool, and heavy it is. It doesn't feel like a typical leaf. It feels like a fruit or a smooth stone. Inside that leaf, the plant has created a sanctuary, a hidden, damp interior that is perfectly shielded from the thirsty air of the desert. To maintain this sanctuary, the succulent has had to completely reinvent the physical structure of a plant. It has moved away from the thin, wide leaves that most plants use to catch the sun, as those wide surfaces lose water far too quickly to evaporation. Instead, it has embraced shapes that are thick, compact, and efficient. This transformation begins on the very surface of the plant, at the boundary where the plant meets the world. Before we can understand the cooling water held within, we must look at the remarkable armor these plants wear, the specialized skin that keeps the desert's heat at bay and the plant's life safely tucked inside. Imagine the surface of a succulent leaf. If you were to look very closely, perhaps through a magnifying glass in the soft, silver light of the moon, you would see that it isn't just green or gray. Many succulents are covered in a fine, powdery coating known as epicuticular wax, or sometimes called farina. This isn't just for decoration. It is a sophisticated biological barrier, a masterpiece of natural engineering that allows life to persist where it otherwise would not. Think of this waxy layer as a waterproof jacket that the plant wears every single day. In the botanical world, this outer layer is called the cuticle. In most plants, you might find in a temperate forest or a rainy garden, the cuticle is thin, just enough to keep the leaf from getting waterlogged in a storm. But in the desert, the cuticle of a succulent is remarkably thick and dense. It is a waxy seal that covers every millimeter of the plant's surface, creating a nearly airtight and watertight boundary between the plant's precious internal fluids and the harsh, dry environment outside. The primary job of this wax is to prevent a process called transpiration. In a typical plant, water moves from the roots up through the stem and evaporates out through the leaves into the air. It is a constant, flowing stream. But in the desert, letting water escape into the thirsty air would be a death sentence. The epicuticular wax acts like a lid on a jar, locking the moisture inside so that not a single drop is wasted. It is so effective that some succulents can survive for months or even years without a single drop of rain, simply because they are so gifted at holding on to the water they already possess. But the desert sun is a powerful, relentless force. In the middle of an afternoon, the heat can be overwhelming, vibrating across the dunes. The light doesn't just provide energy, it carries a weight of heat that tries to pull the moisture right out of the plant's cells. This is where the wax reveals its second secret. Many of these waxes are pale in color, silvery blue, soft white, or a dusty, muted lavender. These colors are not accidental. They are designed to reflect the sun's most intense ultraviolet rays. The plant is essentially wearing its own built-in sunscreen, bouncing the harsh light away before it can bake or damage the delicate tissues beneath the surface. Without this armor, the succulent would scorch in a matter of hours. As you think about this protective layer, take a moment to notice your own surroundings. Just as the succulent is wrapped in its waxy armor, you are wrapped in the softness of your blankets. Feel the weight of the covers over your shoulders and your legs. Like the plant's cuticle, your blankets create a small, private climate just for you, a space where you are warm, safe, and shielded from the world outside your room. Let your muscles soften into that protection. You don't need to do anything right now. You are guarded and secure, just like the desert garden resting under the quiet stars. With the exterior so well defended, we can begin to look even deeper. Beneath that waxy skin and the thick protective cuticle lies the true heart of the succulent's survival. If the skin is the fortress wall, then the interior is the great reservoir. The plant doesn't just hold water in a loose or haphazard way, it organizes it, storing it in specialized cells that have been engineered over eons to expand and contract with the changing seasons. To understand how a plant can remain so cool and vibrant in the middle of a wasteland, we must step inside the leaf itself, into the hidden, rhythmic world of the water storage cells. To understand the true resilience of the succulent, we must look past the protective wax and move deep into the hidden, rhythmic world of the plant's interior. Beneath the surface lies what botanists often call the Great Reservoir. This isn't just a simple hollow space filled with liquid, it is a highly organized network of specialized cells known as parenchyma. These cells are the unsung heroes of the desert garden. Unlike the rigid woody cells found in the trunk of an oak or a pine, parenchyma cells are incredibly flexible and soft. They are designed for one primary purpose: to expand and contract like a living accordion. At the very center of each of these cells sits a large, clear organelle called a vacuole. In most plants, the vacuole is just a small part of the cell's anatomy, but in a succulent, it is the star of the show. You might visualize these vacuoles as tiny internal balloons, When the rains finally arrive, perhaps a sudden summer monsoon or a gentle winter mist, the plant's roots draw that moisture up and distribute it into millions of these microscopic balloons. As they fill, they push the rest of the cell's components right up against the outer walls. The entire plant begins to swell, stretching its skin tight and smooth. It is a slow, silent transformation, a physical manifestation of relief. But the water inside these vacuoles isn't just a thin, watery liquid. If it were, it might evaporate too easily or freeze during a cold desert night. Instead, the plant transforms the water into something much more stable, a substance called mucilage. This is a thick, clear, gel-like material, rich in complex sugars and proteins. If you have ever broken a leaf of an aloe vera plant, you have felt this mucilage. It is cool, slippery, and incredibly dense. This gel is a masterpiece of biological engineering. The molecules within the mucilage act like tiny, powerful magnets, gripping onto the water molecules with a firm embrace. This bound water is much harder to lose to the dry air than free water. It stays tucked away in the deep, dark center of the leaf, held in a state that resists the pull of the thirsty atmosphere. There is a profound beauty in watching a succulent change through the seasons. During a long drought, the plant may look thin, its skin slightly puckered or wrinkled as it slowly uses its internal stores to survive. It looks patient, almost as if it is holding its breath. Then, when that rare rain shower finally drenches the parched earth, the miracle of the parenchyma unfolds. Within hours, the plant begins to plump up. The wrinkles vanish, replaced by a firm, turgid strength. A leaf that was once flat and dull becomes round, heavy, and vibrant with color. This physical filling up is a deeply satisfying sight, a visual representation of a deep, long-awaited drink. As these internal balloons reach their capacity, the succulent gains a surprising amount of weight. A large cactus or a cluster of heavy-leaved succulents can hold hundreds, even thousands of pounds of water. This newfound weight changes the way the plant interacts with the world around it. It can no longer afford to be flimsy or haphazard in its growth. To carry this heavy cargo of life-saving gel, the plant must adopt a very specific kind of architecture. The internal pressure of the water storage dictates the outward form, leading the plant toward shapes that are naturally strong, balanced, and efficient. We begin to see a garden not of random leaves, but of deliberate mathematical beauty. The weight of the water leads us directly into the world of desert geometry, the spheres, cylinders, and spirals that define this quiet landscape. As you look across the desert garden in the soft silver light of the moon, you might notice how many of these plants have moved away from the thin, fluttering leaves we see in cooler forests. Instead, they embrace a geometry of curves, spheres, heavy cylinders, and tight, spiraling rosettes that look almost like sculptures carved from stone. There is a quiet mathematical reason for these shapes, a logic that helps the plant survive when the world around it is dangerously dry. In the language of science, we call this the surface area to volume ratio. To understand this, imagine a flat, thin piece of paper. It has a lot of surface area, but almost no volume. If that paper were wet, the air would dry it out in moments because so much of its moisture is exposed to the environment. Now, Imagine that same amount of material shaped into a solid ball. Most of the moisture is now hidden deep in soil, protected by the outer layers. For a succulent, every inch of skin is a potential exit for its precious water. By growing into thick, rounded shapes, these plants minimize the sun that the sun and wind can touch, while maximizing the amount of water they can store in their cool, gel-filled centers. The barrel cactus is perhaps the most famous example of this efficiency. By being a sphere or a stout cylinder, it achieves the most storage for the least exposure. It is a living reservoir, a heavy, solid presence that stands unmoved by the shifting sands. Even the ribs you see on its sides serve a purpose. They allow the plant to expand and contract like an accordion as it fills with water, but they also create tiny pockets of shade, breaking up the intensity of the light as it moves across the plant surface. Then there is the mesmerizing beauty of the rosette, the shape favored by Echeverrias, Haworthias, and many types of aloe. If you were to look down at one of these plants from directly above, you would see a perfect spiral. This isn't a random growth pattern. It follows a specific mathematical sequence known as the Fibonacci sequence, or the golden ratio. As the plant grows, each new leaf emerges at a very specific angle from the one before it. This ensures that the leaves don't completely overlap, allowing each one to catch a bit of light, but it also creates a remarkable cooling effect. In the peak of a summer afternoon, the upper leaves of a rosette act as a series of tiny umbrellas. They cast small, dark shadows onto the leaves tucked beneath them, lowering the temperature of the plant's core by several degrees. This self-shading is a silent, passive way to stay cool without using a single drop of energy. The plant sits in its own shadow, a masterpiece of geometry and patience. As you settle deeper into your blankets, you might imagine this desert garden as a collection of these perfect shapes, spheres and spirals, all standing still in the cool night air. They have mastered the art of holding on, of keeping their resources tucked away behind waxy walls and clever curves. But even with these perfect shapes, the plant faces a difficult challenge. To live, it must breathe. It must take in carbon dioxide from the air to create the energy it needs to grow. In a normal garden, plants do this during the day, opening tiny pores in their leaves to let the air in. But in the desert, opening those pores under the hot sun would allow all their hard-earned water to vanish into the sky in an instant. To solve this, the succulent has developed a secret rhythm, a specialized way of breathing that only happens when the sun goes down and the air turns sweet and cool. This special way of breathing is a marvel of evolutionary design. Scientists call it KM photosynthesis, or crassulacean acid metabolism. It is a long, rhythmic name for a very simple, quiet strategy, the art of waiting. To understand why this is so important, we have to look at the tiny microscopic world on the surface of a leaf or the skin of a cactus. Scattered across these surfaces are thousands of tiny pores called stomata. You might think of them as tiny mouths that the plant uses to breathe. In most of the world's forests and meadows, plants keep these stomata open during the day. They drink in the sunlight and the air at the same time, using the sun's energy to turn carbon dioxide into the sugars they need to grow. But in the desert, this common way of living is a dangerous gamble. The sun is a powerful, relentless force. As it beats down on the parched earth, it pulls moisture from everything it touches. If a succulent were to open its pores during the heat of the afternoon, the dry, hungry air would reach deep inside its tissues and pull out every molecule of water the plant has worked so hard to save. In a matter of hours, the plant would be drained, its life-giving reserves lost to the sky in a process called transpiration. This creates a constant, silent tension for the desert dweller. It is a balance between the risk of overheating and the risk of drying out. If the plant stays sealed too long, it cannot grow. If it opens up too soon, it might not survive the day. And so, through millions of years of patient evolution, the succulent has learned to separate its life processes. It has chosen to remain airtight and silent while the sun is high, holding its breath with a kind of stoic grace. Imagine the stillness of a barrel cactus in the middle of a July afternoon. It is a solid, heavy presence, completely closed off from the harsh world outside. It is a master of patience, enduring the glare and the shimmering heat with a quiet inner strength. It is essentially fasting, waiting for the world to change, waiting for the light to soften and the stars to appear. It knows that the heat will not last forever, and that the coolness of the evening is its true time to flourish. As you lie there, feeling the stillness of your own room, you can almost sense that same patient waiting. The garden is quiet now. The intense light of the day has finally begun to fade. The sun dips below the horizon, casting long purple shadows across the sand, and the air begins to lose its sharp, dry bite. The ground starts to release its heat into the vast open space of the universe above. This is the moment the succulent has been waiting for. The danger of evaporation begins to drift away, and the plant can finally prepare for its nightly ritual. In the soft blue light of the desert dusk, as the first few stars begin to twinkle, the garden is ready to exhale the day and begin its slow, nocturnal breath. The desert night is a world of its own, a place where the harsh, golden glare of the afternoon is replaced by a deep velvet blue. As the heat of the day radiates away into the clear sky, the air turns crisp and refreshing. This is the moment of liberation for the succulent. In the cool silver light of the moon, the plant finally feels it is safe to act. Under the cover of darkness, those millions of microscopic pores, the stomata, begin to widen, opening like tiny windows to the night air. This is the start of a quiet, rhythmic dance. While the rest of the world might be drifting into slumber, the succulent is finally taking its long-awaited breath. It begins to draw in the carbon dioxide it needs for its survival. But there is a fascinating chemical challenge here. The plant has the air it needs, but it lacks the sunlight required to power the process of photosynthesis. It cannot yet turn that carbon dioxide into food. It has the ingredients, but the kitchen is dark. To solve this, the succulent performs a remarkable feat of biological storage. As the carbon dioxide enters the leaves, the plant's internal chemistry goes to work, converting the gas into a stable, organic form, a substance known as malic acid. It doesn't let this precious resource simply float away. Instead, it carefully tucks the malic acid into those large, water-filled vacuoles we spoke of earlier. These vacuoles act like internal vaults, holding on to the day's potential until the sun returns. This process is what scientists call crassulacean acid metabolism, or CM photosynthesis. It is a slow, methodical way of living that prioritizes safety over speed. Throughout the long, quiet hours of the night, the succulent continues this steady intake, its internal acidity rising as it fills its storage cells with malic acid. It is a silent, invisible harvest gathered under the stairs. As you lie there, nestled in the comfort of your blankets, you might find it peaceful to visualize this garden breathing along with you. Imagine the vast, open desert, the silhouette of the saguaro and the soft clusters of agave all standing still under the Milky Way. Each one is inhaling the cool night air, slowly and deeply. There is no rush, no urgency. The rhythm of the garden is a slow, steady pulse that matches the calm rise and fall of your own chest. Just as you are resting and restoring your energy for tomorrow, the succulent is preparing itself, gathering what it needs in the stillness of the dark. The garden is a place of infinite patience. It doesn't struggle against the desert. It flows with it, timing its life to the movement of the celestial bodies. The moon tracks its slow arc across the sky, and the succulents remain open and receptive, drinking in the darkness. The air is still carrying perhaps the faint, dusty scent of dry earth and the distant promise of a cooling breeze. In this moment, everything is in balance. The plant is safe, its water is secure, and its stores are filling. But the night, as peaceful as it is finite. Eventually, the stars begin to dim, and the deep indigo of the horizon starts to soften into a pale, dusty rose. The first hints of dawn begin to creep across the sand, signaling the end of the breathing time. The succulent senses the shift in temperature and the changing quality of the light. It knows that the heat will soon return, and with it, the need for silence. As the sun prepares to crest the distant mountains, the succulent begins to close its pores once again, sealing itself tight against the coming day. But it is not empty. It is full of the night's work, ready for the next stage of its quiet, chemical magic. As the golden light of the morning begins to spill over the desert floor, the succulent has already completed its first essential task. It has sealed itself tight. The stomata, those microscopic breathing ports, are now firmly shut, locking in every precious molecule of moisture. To an observer, the plant appears completely dormant, a static sculpture of green and gray, seemingly unaffected by the rising heat. But inside, behind those thick, waxy walls, a quiet and brilliant chemical magic is just beginning. The energy from the sun, the very force that would wither a softer plant, is now being harvested by the succulent's chlorophyll. But instead of drawing in fresh air from the outside, which would require opening its pores and losing water to the thirsty desert breeze, the plant reaches into its internal vaults. It takes that malic acid it so carefully stored during the cool, dark hours of the night and begins to break it down. Slowly and methodically, the malic acid is converted back into carbon dioxide. This gas is released directly into the plant's internal tissues, right where it is needed for photosynthesis. It is a beautiful closed-loop system, a private laboratory operating in total isolation from the harsh world outside. The plant is essentially breathing the air it gathered hours ago, using the sun's light to turn that recycled breath into the sugars it needs to grow. It is a patient internal rhythm, a way of living that honors the scarcity of the environment. This internal recycling is what makes the succulent a true master of the arid lands. While a typical garden plant like a rose or a blade of grass must keep its pores open during the day to breathe, losing vast amounts of water to evaporation in the process, the succulent remains a fortress. This strategy is so effective that these plants can produce the same amount of food using up to 10 times less water than their non-succulent counterparts. It is an extraordinary feat of biological engineering, allowing life to persist in places where the very air seems to want to drink you dry. As the sun climbs higher and the desert begins to shimmer with heat, the succulent sits in its self-made shade, silent and efficient. You can imagine the stillness of this process, a slow chemical hum occurring deep within the plant cells while the rest of the world slows down under the weight of the noon sun. It is a reminder that even in the most extreme conditions, there is a way to thrive through conservation and careful timing. However, being a reservoir of water in a land of drought makes the succulent more than just a survivor. It makes it a target. In a landscape where water is more valuable than gold, a plant that is essentially a living canteen is a tempting prize. Every thirsty creature, from the smallest beetle to the largest desert herbivore, knows that inside those thick, succulent leaves lies a cool, life-saving liquid. To survive the day, the succulent cannot rely on its chemistry alone. It must also have a way to defend its treasure. And so, as we look closer at the silhouette of these desert dwellers, we begin to see the intricate, often beautiful, and always formidable structures they have evolved to keep the world at bay. The spines and prickles that stand as silent sentinels over their hidden riches. As you observe the desert garden in the quiet of the evening, your eyes might be drawn to the sharp silhouettes that define so many of these plants. These are the spines, the thorns, and the prickles, the silent guardians of the succulent's water. To the casual observer, they look like simple weapons, meant only to deter a hungry animal. But to a botanist, they are a fascinating example of how nature can repurpose one thing into something entirely different. In the world of the cactus, what we call a spine is actually a modified leaf. Over millions of years, the broad, flat leaves that most plants use to catch the sun were slowly whittled down by evolution. They became thinner and harder until they lost their green color and their ability to photosynthesize, becoming these needle-thin structures instead. By giving up its leaves, the plant drastically reduced the surface area from which water could escape. It is a sacrifice made for the sake of survival, a trade of food-making potential for the ultimate gift of hydration. It is interesting to note the subtle differences in these defenses, though we often use the names interchangeably. True spines, like those on a cactus, are modified leaves. Thorns, such as those you might find on a citrus tree or certain desert shrubs, are actually modified stems, branches that have become sharp and woody. And then there are prickles, like the ones on a rose bush. These are simply outgrowths of the plant's outer skin, or epidermis. Each one is a slightly different biological solution to the same problem: how to stay safe in a world that is always searching for a drink. But the spines do much more than just provide a physical barrier. If you were to shrink down and stand on the surface of a heavily spined cactus, you would discover a hidden world of calm. A dense network of spines creates what scientists call a boundary layer. This is a thin pocket of still air that is trapped right against the plant's skin. In the open desert, the wind is a constant thief, blowing across the landscape and wicking away moisture from any surface it touches. But within that forest of spines, the air is quiet. It doesn't move. This layer of stagnant air acts like a soft, invisible blanket, insulating the plant and significantly slowing down the rate of evaporation. It is a microclimate of the plant's own making, a way to keep the world at a distance. If you look closely at many desert plants, you'll notice that their spines are often white or very pale. This is not a coincidence. These light-colored spines act as 1,000 tiny parasols, reflecting the harsh ultraviolet rays of the sun away from the plant's sensitive green tissues. A cactus covered in a thick coat of white spines can actually be several degrees cooler than a plant with no protection at all. They create a dappled, shifting shade that follows the sun as it moves across the sky, ensuring that no single part of the plant is scorched for too long. As the heat of the day continues to fade and the moon begins to cast its own silver glow over the garden, you might notice that the succulents without spines have their own ways of reflecting the light. They don't rely on needles, but on color. Many succulents possess a soft, dusty appearance, a hue that isn't quite green, but rather a pale, ghostly blue or a shimmering silver. This characteristic, often described as glaucous, is yet another layer of the desert's quiet, beautiful strategy for dealing with the intensity of the sun, leading us into the secret chemistry of the colors we see before us. That soft, dusty blue you see on so many desert plants is often a coating of epicuticular wax. But beneath that wax lies a complex world of chemistry. If you were to look deep into the cells of these plants, you would find a palette of pigments that do far more than just catch the eye. We are most familiar with chlorophyll, the pigment that gives leaves their green color and allows plants to turn sunlight into food. But in the desert, where the sun is an unrelenting force, green alone is not enough. Succulents have evolved a sophisticated system of secondary pigments, primarily carotenoids and anthocyanins. Think of these as the plant's own internal sunscreen. Carotenoids are the same pigments that make carrots orange and autumn leaves yellow. They are incredibly efficient at absorbing excess light energy and dissipating it as harmless heat before it can cause cellular damage. Anthocyanins, on the other hand, are responsible for the deep reds, purples, and blues. They act like a colorful filter, sitting in the outer layers of the plant's tissue to shield the sensitive light-harvesting machinery deeper inside. When you look at a desert garden, you might notice that some plants are a vibrant, healthy green, while others seem to be blushing with shades of crimson or bronze. This change in color is often a response to environmental stress. In the botanical world, stress isn't necessarily a negative state. It is simply a signal for the plant to adapt to its surroundings. When a succulent is exposed to intense direct sunlight for many hours, or when water becomes particularly scarce, it begins to produce more anthocyanins as a protective measure. This process, known as photoprotection, is a remarkable feat of biological engineering. The plant is essentially putting on a coat to protect itself from the very energy it needs to grow. By turning red or purple, the succulent reduces the amount of light that reaches its chlorophyll. This prevents a phenomenon called photoinhibition, where too much light actually shuts down the plant's ability to photosynthesize, potentially leading to the death of the tissue. It is a delicate, silent negotiation with the sun, taking just enough energy to survive, while reflecting away the rest to stay safe. There is a quiet irony in the fact that the most beautiful colors we see in a desert landscape are often the signs of a plant working its hardest to endure. The dusty lavenders of a ghost plant or the fiery orange tips of a stone crop are not merely decorative. They are the visible evidence of a living thing protecting its core, a chemical shield against the brilliance of the day. To our eyes, it looks like a masterpiece of garden design, but to the plant, it is a sturdy, colorful armor. As you rest here, imagine those colors softening in the dim light of the moon. The reds turn to deep maroons, and the blues become soft shadows. The plant doesn't need its sunscreen at night. It can finally relax its chemical defenses as the temperature drops. Feel that same sense of release in your own body. The day is over and the need for protection has passed. You can let go of the day's brightness and settle into the cool, dark comfort of your blankets. But the story of the succulent's survival doesn't end with its skin or its colors. While we have spent our time looking at the parts of the plant that reach for the sky, there is an equally fascinating world beneath the surface. To find the secret of how these plants capture the rarest of rains, we must move our focus downward, away from the colorful leaves and into the cool, dark earth, where the roots begin their silent, reaching work. Underneath the colorful rosettes and the waxy, protective skin we've been admiring, there is a hidden architecture, a silent network of life stretching out into the dark, cool earth. While we might imagine that a plant living in such a dry place would send its roots deep into the center of the world to find hidden reservoirs of water, the succulent often employs a different, more immediate strategy. It is what botanists call a shallow but wide root system, and it is a masterpiece of opportunistic efficiency. Most succulent roots sit just a few inches below the surface of the sand or gravel. They do not seek the depths, they seek the horizon. If you were to look beneath the soil of a single, modest barrel cactus, you might find a web of roots reaching out several feet in every direction, yet staying so close to the surface that they are practically touching the air. This placement is intentional and vital for survival in an arid land. In the desert, when a rare light rain falls, or when the cool night air causes a heavy dew to settle on the ground, the moisture doesn't soak deep into the parched earth. Instead, it lingers near the surface for only a few moments before the heat of the following day pulls it back into the skin. By keeping its roots high, the succulent is positioned to catch that moisture before it vanishes. There is a beautiful, quiet alertness to this system. The roots are always there, resting in the dry soil, waiting for the arrival of water. But perhaps the most incredible part of this underground world is the phenomenon of rain roots. When the first few drops of a storm hit the thirsty ground, the plant undergoes a transformation that is almost too fast to believe. Within just a few hours, sometimes as little as 8 to 12, the existing permanent roots begin to sprout tiny, delicate new hairs. These rain roots are temporary, fragile, and incredibly efficient. They are designed to suck up every possible molecule of water while the ground is still damp. Once the soil dries out again, which can happen very quickly in the desert sun, these tiny hairs will wither and fall away. The plant does not waste energy maintaining them when they aren't needed. It is a system of just-in-time biology, a perfect response to an environment where resources are fleeting and unpredictable. The plant lives in a state of patient readiness, capable of springing into action at the first sign of a gift from the clouds. This horizontal reach gives the succulent a sense of stability that is wide rather than deep. It anchors the plant against the sudden, buffeting desert winds while ensuring it is the first to taste the rain. As you lie there, you might think of your own body settling into the bed, spreading its weight evenly across the soft surface, much like those roots spreading through the soil. There is no need to strain or reach for anything right now. You are simply resting, wide and still, ready to absorb the quiet of the night. While this shallow strategy works perfectly for the succulent, it is not the only way to survive the heat of the arid lands. In the distance, beyond the borders of our moonlit garden, there are other plants that take the opposite approach, the deep seekers. These are the plants that refuse to stay near the surface, choosing instead to embark on a long vertical journey toward the hidden waters locked far beneath the sand. These deep seekers are known to botanists as phreatophytes. The name itself is derived from the Greek words for well and plant, which perfectly describes their strategy for survival. While the succulents in our garden are content to wait for the rain to come to them from the sky, the phreatophytes go searching for it deep within the earth. They do not rely on the unpredictable gift of a passing storm. Instead, they seek out the permanent, hidden reservoir of the water table, known as the phreatic zone, which can lie many dozens of feet below the surface. Consider the honey mesquite tree, a common and resilient resident of the arid lands. To look at a mesquite, you might see a modest-sized tree with twisted branches and small waxy leaves. But beneath the sand, there is a hidden giant. The taproot of a mesquite can descend over 150 feet into the earth. To put that in perspective, that is the height of a 15-story building, inverted and buried in the ground. This single powerful root pushes through layers of sun-baked clay, gravel, and even tiny cracks in solid rock, driven by a biological imperative to find the cool, dark moisture that has been stored there for centuries. This strategy requires an incredible amount of patience and a massive investment of energy. A young seedling must commit almost all of its resources to growing that downward root before it can even think about expanding its canopy or producing seeds. It is a slow, methodical journey through the dark, silent earth. Some succulents also participate in this deep-seeking behavior, particularly those that grow in shifting sand dunes where the surface is too unstable to hold on to. They send a thick, carrot-like taproot deep into the ground, acting both as a waterline and a heavy anchor that prevents the plant from being swept away by the wind or buried by moving sand. As you listen to the imaginary silence of the desert night, take a moment to feel your own sense of grounding. Imagine that you too have roots that reach deep into the quiet earth beneath you. Feel the weight of your body pressing down, sinking into the soft, reliable support of your bed. There is a profound sense of safety in being so well anchored. Like the mesquite, you are steady. You are connected to something deep and unchanging. The world above may be vast and open, but here, in the stillness of your rest, you are held firm by the gravity of the earth. You are grounded, secure, and entirely at peace. But even these deep-reaching roots do not work in total isolation. In the dry, mineral-rich soil of the desert, survival is rarely a solo endeavor. Even at the tips of the deepest roots, in the crushing pressure of the earth, there are invisible partners waiting to help. These are the microscopic fungi of the desert, forming a silent, ancient alliance that stretches through the sand like a web, connecting the trees and the succulents to the very nutrients they need to thrive. This hidden partnership and intricate network of life beneath the surface is what truly allows the desert garden to flourish in the face of such adversity. As we move deeper into the quiet, cool layers of the soil, we find a delicate, shimmering architecture that most people never see. Surrounding the tips of those deep-reaching roots is a fine, silver-white webbing known as mycorrhizal fungi. These are not the fleshy mushrooms you might find on a damp forest floor, but incredibly thin, thread-like structures called hyphae. They are so microscopic that they can slip into tiny pores in the sand and crevices in the rock that even the smallest root hair could never hope to enter. In the desert, where every grain of nutrient and every molecule of water is a hard-won treasure, these fungi act as a vital extension of the plant's own body, expanding its reach far beyond its physical limits. The relationship between the succulent and the fungi is a beautiful, silent trade, a partnership of mutual support that has existed for millions of years. The plant, through the quiet magic of its photosynthesis, creates sugars and carbohydrates, the energy it has harvested from the golden sunlight above. It shares a portion of this energy with the fungi, feeding them in the dark of the earth. In exchange, the fungi use their vast, sprawling network to forage through the mineral-rich sand, mining for phosphorus, nitrogen, and essential micronutrients. They act like a living filtration system, gathering these elements and delivering them directly into the plant's roots. It is a quiet contract signed in the stillness of the underground, a steady exchange that ensures both life forms can thrive where neither could survive alone. In the lush forest of the north, scientists often call this the wood wide web, a communication and nutrient-sharing network that connects the trees. But here, in our moonlit desert garden, a similar web exists, weaving through the dry soil and connecting the scattered residents of the sand. This underground network can link different plants to one another, sometimes even connecting different species in a hidden community. A mature, established desert shrub might, through these fungal bridges, share a small amount of its resources with a tiny, struggling seedling nearby. It is a reminder that even in a landscape that appears so solitary and sparse, there is an invisible infrastructure of care and cooperation beneath the surface. No plant truly stands alone. They are all held together by this ancient silver thread. As you settle deeper into your blankets, imagine this network stretching out beneath you, a soft and steady web of connection. It is a system built on patience and slow rhythmic growth. Just as the fungi move through the soil with effortless grace, you can feel your own thoughts slowing down, drifting through the quiet spaces of your mind. There is no rush here. The desert does not demand speed. It rewards the steady and the interconnected. This invisible foundation of roots and fungi provides the strength for the desert's most magnificent residents to rise. One of the greatest beneficiaries of this underground cooperation is a plant that stands as a true sentinel of the arid world, the saguaro cactus. Emerging from a seed no larger than a single grain of black pepper, the saguaro begins a life of incredible endurance and stature. It is a journey of centuries, a slow ascent toward the stars that begins with the quiet, fungal-assisted strength of its very first root. As we look up from the hidden world of the soil, we see the saguaro standing tall and silent in the moonlight, a living pillar of time and resilience. Standing tall in the silver light of the moon, the saguaro cactus, known to scientists as Carnegiea gigantea, is the undisputed king of this arid garden. It is a living pillar of time, a sentinel that has watched the desert breathe for longer than any human memory. When you look at a mature saguaro, you are looking at an organism that has mastered the art of waiting. Its journey is one of incredible, deliberate slowness, a pace that mirrors the steady rhythm of your own breath as you settle into the quiet of the night. Every saguaro begins its life as a tiny black seed, no larger than a single grain of pepper. For this seed to survive, it often needs the protection of a nurse plant, perhaps a palo verde tree or a creosote bush, to shield it from the harshest rays of the sun. In these early years, its growth is almost imperceptible. It takes a full decade, 10 years of seasons turning and stars wheeling overhead for the saguaro to grow just one single inch. Imagine the patience required for such a beginning. While the world around it rushes, the saguaro remains still, focusing all its energy on establishing its foundation in the earth. It does not hurry to reach the sky, it simply exists, growing molecule by molecule, inch by inch. By the time a saguaro reaches the height of a person, it may already be 50 or 60 years old. It has endured decades of drought, heat, and cold, standing unmoved through it all. A truly mature saguaro can live for 150 to 200 years, becoming a multi-generational witness to the desert's history. It is a thought that brings a sense of profound peace. The idea that something can stand so peacefully for 2 centuries, simply breathing with the earth. There is a deep comfort in that kind of longevity, a reminder that the world moves in cycles much larger than our own daily worries. One of the most recognizable features of the saguaro is its iconic arms reaching upward toward the clouds. But these arms are a mark of profound maturity. A saguaro typically does not even begin to grow its first arm until it is at least 75 years old, and sometimes not until it has passed its 100th birthday. For the first century of its life, it is a single, straight column, a solitary green finger pointing toward the heavens. Only when it has achieved a certain internal strength and stability does it begin to branch out, creating the majestic silhouette we recognize today. Each arm is a testament to a century of survival. As you lie still, you might imagine the weight and the presence of such a giant. Despite its immense size, the saguaro is held upright by a hidden internal architecture. Beneath its green pleated skin, there is a circular arrangement of woody rods, often called ribs. These ribs are the secret to its stature, providing a flexible yet incredibly strong skeleton that allows the cactus to stand tall, even when it is heavy with thousands of pounds of stored water. These ribs form the core of the plant, a structural masterpiece that allows it to sway slightly in the desert wind without ever breaking. It is a balance of strength and flexibility, a sturdy inner frame that supports the soft, life-giving water within. In the stillness of the night, this skeleton remains firm and unyielding, a quiet marvel of natural engineering that keeps the giant upright against the vast desert sky. These internal wooden rods, or ribs, are more than just a frame. They are a masterwork of natural engineering that allows the saguaro to perform a feat of strength that seems almost impossible for a living thing. Imagine the sheer mass these ribs must support. After a rare, heavy desert rain, a mature saguaro can soak up so much liquid that its weight increases by thousands of pounds in a very short window of time. A fully hydrated large specimen can weigh as much as 6 tons. That is the weight of a large African elephant or several cars, all held upright by a single green pillar. To manage this immense fluctuating weight, the saguaro employs a design that is both rigid and incredibly flexible. If you were to look closely at the green surface of the cactus, you would see deep vertical folds running from the base all the way to the crown. These are the pleats, and they function exactly like the bellows of an accordion. When the roots pull water from the saturated soil, the internal tissues of the cactus begin to swell. The pleats allow the skin to expand outward without tearing, turning the narrow column into a thick, rounded cylinder. In the dry months that follow, as the saguaro slowly uses its stored reserves to survive, the process reverses. The pleats pull back inward, the cactus becomes slimmer, and the skin folds deeply once again. It is a slow motion pulse, a rhythmic expansion and contraction that takes place over weeks and months, rather than seconds. This movement is so subtle that it is invisible to the naked eye, yet it is the very heartbeat of the saguaro's survival. It is a reminder that even the most solid-looking things in nature are often in a state of gentle, fluid change, adapting their very shape to the resources available to them. As the saguaro stands tall and steady, its woody skeleton anchoring it to the earth, we might turn our gaze slightly lower toward a different kind of architectural wonder nestled in the desert soil. Nearby, the agave sits in a low, dense rosette, its thick, succulent leaves arranged in a perfect spiral. while the saguaro is a master of the long, slow game, living for 2 centuries and blooming every year once it reaches maturity. The agave follows a path that is much more singular and dramatic. The agave, often called the century plant, has a presence that feels grounded and heavy. Its leaves are edged with sharp teeth and tipped with a needle-like point, protecting the precious moisture stored within its heart. For decades, it sits in the sand, growing slowly and gathering energy leaf by leaf. It does not bloom annually like the saguaro. Instead, it spends its entire life, sometimes 20, 30, or 40 years, preparing for one single spectacular event. It is a plant that understands the value of a grand finale, a living witness to the idea that some things are worth waiting a lifetime for. In the cool silver light of the moon, the agave looks like a carved sculpture of stone and wax, silent and steady, but within its core, a powerful transformation is beginning to stir. This quiet, unassuming rosette is about to embark on the most energetic and final journey of its life, a journey that will reach toward the stars one last time. The name century plant carries a weight of legend, suggesting a lifetime that spans 100 years of desert history. In reality, most agaves live between 10 and 30 years, though in the slow, sun-drenched pace of the arid world, 30 years can feel like an eternity. For all those decades, the agave is a model of patient accumulation. It sits low to the ground, its thick, blue-green leaves gathering every scrap of sunlight, every molecule of carbon dioxide, and every rare drop of rain. It is a biological savings account, tucking away energy in the form of complex sugars and starches, hidden deep within its fibrous heart. Then, one year, a silent signal is given. Perhaps it is triggered by a particularly wet winter or a specific internal clock reaching its final hour. The plant begins its one and only act of reproduction. This is what botanists call being monocarpic, a word derived from the Greek for single fruit. It means the plant will bloom only once in its entire life, and that bloom will be its final signature. The transformation is one of the most dramatic sights in the natural world. From the center of the rosette, a thick, spear-like stalk begins to emerge. In the desert garden, this stalk is often called a quiote. It grows with a speed that seems almost impossible for such a slow-moving environment. On a warm spring day, an agave stalk can grow several inches in 24 hours, fueled by the decades of energy stored in the leaves below. It rises 10, 20, sometimes 30 feet into the air, looking like a giant stalk of asparagus reaching for the clouds. As the stalk climbs higher and higher, the rosette at the base begins to change. The leaves, which were once turgid, plump, and full of life, start to lose their luster. They begin to wrinkle and sag. The plant is quite literally draining itself dry, pumping every last drop of moisture and every ounce of sugar upward into the developing flowers. It is a total selfless investment in the future. The agave is pouring its entire existence into this one towering mast, sacrificing its own body so that its seeds might have the best possible chance to be seen and carried away. This final act creates a strange, beautiful tension in the garden. There is a sense of urgency in the stalk's upward climb, contrasted with the slow, visible fading of the mother plant. By the time the flowers at the very top begin to open, the lower leaves may already be turning brown and papery, their job nearly finished. The plant is exhausted, but it has achieved something magnificent. At the summit of the stalk, clusters of tubular flowers begin to unfurl. They do not bloom all at once. They open in stages, starting from the bottom of the cluster and moving upward. These flowers are often pale yellow or creamy white, glowing softly against the darkening sky. They are filled with an incredible amount of nectar, a sweet liquid reward for anyone brave enough to travel the desert night. As the sun dips below the horizon and the desert air begins to cool, the agave stands like a beacon. The scent of the nectar begins to drift on the evening breeze, a heavy, musky perfume that travels for miles across the dunes. It is an invitation, a call to the creatures of the dark. The plant has spent 30 years preparing for this moment, and now, under the silver light of the moon, the first visitors begin to arrive. They are the night flyers, the silent navigators who have evolved alongside the agave for millions of years, ready to play their part in this ancient nocturnal dance. The first to arrive are often the nectar-feeding bats, the silent gardeners of the night. Unlike the bats that hunt for insects using sonar, these specialized creatures, such as the lesser long-nosed bat, have evolved specifically to seek out the sugary rewards hidden within desert blooms. They are small and furred, with long, delicate snouts and tongues that can extend deep into the heart of a flower. As they hover briefly at the agave's blossoms, their faces and chests become dusted with golden pollen. When they fly to the next towering stalk miles away, they carry this life-giving dust with them, ensuring the genetic diversity of the desert for generations to come. It is a partnership built on trust and timing. The plant provides the fuel for the bat's long migration, and the bat provides the means for the plant to reproduce. Beside the bats, you might see the hawk moth, often called the sphinx moth. These large, elegant insects hover with such precision that they are frequently mistaken for hummingbirds in the twilight. Their wings move in a blur of motion, yet their bodies remain perfectly still as they unfurl a long, straw-like proboscis to sip the nectar. There is a profound stillness in this activity, a focused energy that belongs only to the night. In the silver glow of the moon, the desert garden has no need for the bright reds or vibrant oranges that attract bees and butterflies during the day. Instead, evolution has favored a palette of white, cream, and pale yellow. Under the moonlight, these light colors act as natural reflectors, capturing every stray photon and glowing like small lanterns against the dark silhouettes of the cacti. To a night-flying pollinator, these pale blossoms stand out with remarkable clarity, guiding them through the vast, dark landscape. While the eyes are guided by the light, the senses are also pulled by the scent. This is perhaps most famously true of the night-blooming cereus, a plant often called the queen of the night. For 364 days of the year, the cereus looks like nothing more than a collection of dry, gray sticks, easily overlooked among the more flamboyant succulents. But on one single night in midsummer, it undergoes a transformation. Large, waxy white flowers unfurl as the sun sets, releasing a fragrance so powerful and so sweet that it can be detected from hundreds of yards away. It is a heavy, musky perfume, reminiscent of vanilla and orange blossoms designed to cut through the dry desert air and signal to every moth in the vicinity that the window of opportunity is open. By dawn, the flowers will wilt and fade, their brief, spectacular life concluded. This cycle of intense, dramatic blooming is a hallmark of many desert species. But as we move through our garden, we encounter plants that offer a different kind of presence, one that is steady, enduring, and deeply integrated into the history of human wellness. We leave the towering agaves and the fleeting blossoms of the night-blooming cereus behind to look toward a group of plants that have traveled from the arid lands of Africa and the Arabian Peninsula to become some of the most recognized succulents in the world. These are the aloes. Unlike the agave, which gives everything for one final bloom, the aloe is a perennial companion, growing slowly and blooming many times throughout its long life, offering a quiet, cooling relief to the heat of the desert sun. As we continue our journey through the desert garden, we find ourselves standing before a plant that feels like an old friend. The aloe, with its familiar rosettes of fleshy, lance-shaped leaves, is a staple of both the wild landscape and the quiet corners of our homes. While many of us are acquainted with the common aloe vera, the genus is actually a vast and diverse family, comprising over 500 distinct species. These plants have traveled from the rocky hillsides of Africa and the sun-drenched plains of the Arabian Peninsula, bringing with them a specialized chemistry that has fascinated humans for thousands of years. Some aloes are small, grass-like tufts that hide in the shade of larger shrubs, while others, like the quiver tree, grow into massive, tree-like structures with golden bark that reflects the harsh light of the meridian sun. The true secret of the aloe, however, lies within. If you were to gently open a leaf, you would find a thick, clear, and viscous gel, a substance that is much more than mere water. This gel is a complex biological laboratory. It is rich in polysaccharides, which are long-chain sugar molecules that act as a natural scaffold. When applied to a wound or a burn, these molecules form a protective, breathable film over the skin, locking in moisture and creating a sanctuary for the cells to begin their repair work. Among these, a specific compound called osmannin is particularly notable. It helps the body's own defense systems move more efficiently to the site of an injury. Just beneath the tough, waxy skin of the leaf, there is another layer, a thin, yellowish sap known as aloin. This substance is incredibly bitter, acting as a chemical shield against any hungry animal that might try to snack on the succulent's moisture. While the inner gel heals, the outer sap protects. It is a perfect balance of utility and defense, a testament to the plant's ability to thrive in an environment that asked so much of its inhabitants. Take a moment now to imagine that cooling sensation. Think of the way a drop of cool water feels on a warm afternoon. Visualize the smooth, soothing texture of the aloe gel as it touches the skin, drawing away the heat and replacing it with a quiet, calm hydration. Let that feeling of cooling relief spread through you now. Imagine any tension in your muscles simply dissolving, as if a gentle, healing balm is being smoothed over your thoughts. Your breath is steady and slow, moving with the same unhurried pace as the aloe's growth. You are grounded, protected, and at ease, while the aloe stands tall, making its presence known with its architectural leaves and occasional spikes of tubular flowers. Other plants in this garden have chosen a much more secretive path. As we look down at the ground, toward the patches of sand and scattered gravel at our feet, the landscape seems at first to be nothing but stones. But if you look very closely, you will see that some of these stones are breathing. We are transitioning now from the prominent and the medicinal to the masters of disguise, the lithops, or living stones. In the vast open spaces of the desert, where every drop of moisture is a treasure, these tiny plants have mastered the art of hiding in plain sight, blending so perfectly with the earth that they become nearly invisible to the untrained eye. As we lower our gaze to the desert floor, the distinction between life and the inanimate begins to blur. Here, nestled among the real quartz and granite pebbles, are the lithops. Their name comes from the ancient Greek words lithos, meaning stone, and ops, meaning face or appearance. They are often called living stones, and for good reason. To a wandering, thirsty animal, they look like nothing more than a pair of weathered, mottled rocks, hard, dry, and entirely unappealing. This is the art of mimicry at its most refined. In an environment where a single succulent leaf is a prize worth fighting for, the lithops has chosen to simply disappear into the background. If you were to look closely, you would see that a lithops is composed of two extremely thick, fleshy leaves that are almost entirely fused together. There is no stem to speak of, and the majority of the plant's body actually lives below the surface of the soil. By burying itself, the lithops protects its delicate internal tissues from the searing heat and the drying winds. Only the very tops of the leaves are exposed to the sky, but this presents a biological challenge. How does a plant buried in the earth receive enough sunlight to create food? The solution is one of the most beautiful examples of natural engineering. The top surface of each leaf is covered in small translucent patches known as epidermal windows. These windows act like biological skylights. They allow the harsh, direct sunlight to pass through the tough outer skin and travel deep into the subterranean part of the leaf where the chlorophyll is hidden away. The light that reaches the interior is softened and filtered, preventing the plant from burning while still providing the energy it needs to survive. Think of that filtered light for a moment. Imagine a soft emerald glow deep within the cool earth, protected from the glare of the midday sun. It is a quiet, hidden world of growth occurring just beneath the surface of the sand. As you lie there, let your own focus turn inward, just like the light in the lithops. Feel the coolness of your surroundings and the safety of being tucked away, far from the demands of the day. The life of a living stone is one of incredible patience. They do not rush to grow or bloom. Instead, they follow the rhythm of the seasons with absolute precision. When the rains fail to arrive, the lithops does not struggle. It simply waits. It enters a state of profound stillness, using the water stored within its thick body to survive for months on end. During these dry periods, the plant may even shrink slightly, pulling itself deeper into the ground until it is level with the surrounding gravel. This ability to pause, to stop all unnecessary activity and simply exist, is a vital part of desert survival. It is a concept known as dormancy, a quiet season where the plant's internal clock slows down to a crawl. In the desert, survival isn't always about growth or movement. Often, it is about the grace of waiting. As the seasons shift and the heat becomes truly intense, Many succulents, not just the lithops, enter an even deeper state of rest. They move from simple dormancy into a specialized form of protection, a way to endure the most extreme conditions the sun can offer. This deeper state of rest is known to scientists as a stivation. While we are all familiar with hibernation, the long winter sleep that many animals take to avoid the freezing cold, estivation is its mirror image. It is the summer sleep, a strategic retreat from the relentless, searing heat of the high desert sun. When the temperatures climb to levels that would wither almost any other living thing, the succulent makes a biological choice. It decides to stop. It closes its metabolic doors and enters a period of profound inactivity. During estivation, the plant's internal processes undergo a dramatic shift. It moves into what researchers call a state of dormancy-induced stasis. Think of it as a low-power mode for a complex machine. The plant's breathing, those tiny pores called stomata, remains tightly sealed, not just during the searing day, but sometimes for many days and nights in a row. This is a biological lockdown, an emergency measure designed to preserve the precious reservoir of water the plant has spent so long collecting. If it were to continue its normal functions, the heat would pull the moisture right out of its tissues, leaving it hollow and dry. Instead, it holds its breath and waits. Inside the plant cells, something truly remarkable happens. The chemical reactions that drive growth and energy production slow down to a crawl. If we could look inside with a microscopic lens, we would see a world in slow motion. The movement of nutrients through the cell walls, the synthesis of proteins, and the very pulse of life itself settle into a low, steady hum. It is as if the plant has found a way to make time stand still, waiting for the environment to become kind again. In this state, the succulent requires almost no energy. It doesn't need to produce new leaves or extend its roots. It simply exists, a silent, living stone witness to the passage of the sun across the sky. This slowing of time is a beautiful form of patience. The plant doesn't struggle against the heat. It doesn't fight the drought. It accepts the conditions as they are and adjusts its internal rhythm to match the harshness of the world outside. There is a great lesson in this stillness, the idea that survival is not always about effort, but often about the wisdom of knowing when to rest. Think of your own body now as you lie here in the quiet. Much like the succulent in its summer sleep, you are entering a time where the demands of the world are fading away. Your breath is slowing, finding a natural, unhurried pace. Your heart is settling into a steady, calm rhythm. You are moving into your own version of that deep, restorative rest, where the only thing that matters is the quiet pulse of your own existence. There is no need to rush, no need to solve problems, and no need to do anything at all but be still and let the day drift away. Even in this deep state of estivation, the plant must still navigate the desert's most dramatic feature, the radical change that occurs when the sun finally slips below the horizon. In the arid garden, the environment is never truly stable for long. The intense baking heat of the afternoon can vanish with surprising speed, replaced by a sudden, piercing chill. This transition is one of the most taxing challenges for any desert dweller. the vast rhythmic swing between the fire of the midday sun and the cool, thin air of the midnight stars. This phenomenon, the great temperature gap between day and night, is what shapes the very chemistry of the desert floor. This dramatic swing is known to scientists as the diurnal temperature range. In many parts of the world, where the air is thick with humidity, the difference between the day's high and the night's low is often only 10 or 20 degrees. But in the desert, that gap can be massive, sometimes spanning 60 or 70 degrees in a single 12-hour period. You might find yourself standing in a landscape that is baking at a blistering 110 degrees at 2 in the afternoon, only to find the mercury dipping toward a shivering 40 degrees by 2 in the morning. The reason for this sudden, deep chill lies in the very thing the desert lacks: water vapor. In more temperate climates, the moisture in the air acts as a heavy, invisible blanket. This humidity traps the long-wave radiation, the heat, that the Earth tries to release back into space after the sun goes down. But in the arid garden, the air is thin and incredibly dry. There is no blanket to hold the warmth. The moment the sun slips behind the dunes, the heat that has accumulated throughout the day simply vanishes. It radiates upward, passing through the clear, cloudless atmosphere and escaping out into the vast, cold void of the cosmos. For most living things, such a violent fluctuation in temperature is a source of immense physical stress. If you were to move a common garden plant into this environment, the rapid cooling would cause its internal systems to falter. But the succulent has evolved a beautiful passive way to navigate this daily cycle. It uses a principle of physics called thermal mass. Think of a large barrel cactus or a towering saguaro. These plants are essentially massive columns of water, and water has a very high specific heat capacity. This means it takes a great deal of energy to raise the temperature of water, and it takes a long time for that water to lose its heat once it has been warmed. Throughout the long sun-drenched day, the succulent acts like a thermal battery. It slowly soaks up the sun's energy, storing it deep within its fleshy tissues. While the outside air may be scorching, the internal temperature of the plant rises much more slowly, staying within a safe, manageable range. Then, as the desert night arrives and the air temperature plummets, the process reverses. The heat stored within the plant's core begins to radiate outward, but very, very slowly. This internal warmth acts as a buffer, preventing the plant's cells from freezing or becoming dormant during the cold midnight hours. By the time the cactus has finally begun to lose its stored warmth, the sun is already cresting the horizon again, beginning the cycle anew. It is a perfect rhythmic balance, a way of using the intensity of the day to survive the bitterness of the night. As you lie there now, you might feel a similar sense of balance. The air in your room may be cool and still, but beneath your blankets, you have created your own pocket of steady warmth. Like the succulent, you are protected by your own thermal mass, your body settling into a constant, comfortable temperature that allows your mind to drift. You are safe from the shifts of the outside world, held in a quiet, temperate space where you can simply be. The desert garden, too, settles into this nightly equilibrium. The plants stand like silent sentinels, their thick skins holding on to the day's golden warmth as the stars wheel overhead. They are not hurried by the cold, nor are they panicked by the heat. They simply wait, their entire biology tuned to the long, slow pulse of the earth. And while the adult plants have managed these temperature swings with their massive bodies, the next generation of life is waiting just beneath the surface, tucked away in tiny, dormant packages that have their own extraordinary way of sensing when the world is finally ready for them to wake. These tiny packages of life, the seeds of the desert, are perhaps the most patient organisms on our planet. They do not measure time in hours or days, but in the arrival of water. If you were to look closely at the parched, cracked earth between the mature succulents, you wouldn't see them, yet they are there by the millions, tucked just beneath the surface in a state of profound slumber. This isn't just a simple sleep, it is a chemically enforced waiting game. Within the outer shell of each seed, there are substances known as germination inhibitors. These are clever biological locks that prevent the seed from waking up prematurely. In a place where a single afternoon of rain might be followed by 6 months of blistering drought, a seed cannot afford to be impulsive. If it sprouted after a light passing mist, it would quickly wither and die as the soil dried out. So the seed coat waits. It acts as a rain gauge, requiring a specific, heavy volume of water to flow over it, physically leaching these chemical inhibitors away. Only when a deep, saturating rain arrives, the kind that soaks far down into the cool earth, are these inhibitors finally washed out. It is a beautiful, silent calculation. The seed knows that if there's enough water to remove the chemical barrier, there is likely enough moisture stored in the soil to support its first few weeks of growth. When this happens across an entire landscape, we witness one of nature's most breathtaking spectacles, the super bloom. Imagine, for a moment, the desert floor transformed. Where there was once only brown sand and gray rock, there is now a vast, undulating carpet of color. Delicate desert primroses, golden poppies, and purple lupines stretch as far as the eye can see. The air, usually so dry and still, becomes heavy with the soft, sweet scent of a billion tiny petals. This is the desert's way of celebrating, a brief and glorious window where the environment is gentle enough for the most fragile life to thrive. It is a reminder that even in the driest places, the potential for life is always there, resting, waiting for the perfect moment to reveal itself. However, as the sun returns to its full intensity and the seasonal moisture begins to evaporate, these annual flowers will eventually fade, leaving behind a new generation of tiny, slow-growing succulents. These infants of the desert are not yet tough enough to withstand the relentless heat of the open flats on their own. They are small, tender, and full of the precious water that every thirsty animal in the vicinity craves. To survive their first few critical years, they need more than just a lucky rain. They need a protector, a sanctuary within the harshness. They find this refuge in the shadow of others, entering into a relationship that botanists call nurse-plant ecology. As you settle deeper into your own sanctuary of blankets, you can imagine these small seedlings finding their place in the world. Just as you are cradled by the comfort of your room, these young plants are tucked away in specific, sheltered spots, shielded from the wind and the direct glare of the sun. They are not alone in the vastness. They are part of a quiet, supportive network that ensures life continues even in the most challenging conditions. They find safety in the shade, waiting in the cool, filtered light for their turn to grow tall. Imagine a young saguaro cactus, no taller than a human thumb. In the vast, open expanse of the desert, this tiny green life is incredibly vulnerable. The sun's rays are too intense, the wind is too drying, and the ground is too hot for its delicate tissues to withstand on their own. But if you look closer, perhaps near the base of a sturdy, wide-reaching Palo Verde tree or a dense, ancient creosote bush, you will see where the magic of survival begins. There, tucked away in the dappled, moving shadows, the seedling finds its sanctuary. This larger, established plant is what botanists call a nurse plant. The relationship between a nurse plant and its charge is one of the most touching examples of quiet cooperation in the natural world. The canopy of the nurse tree acts as a living parasol, filtering the harsh, ultraviolet light and creating a pocket of gentler air. Beneath its branches, the environment is fundamentally different from the exposed ground just a few feet away. Scientific measurements show that the microclimate under a nurse tree can be significantly milder, often 10 degrees cooler or more during the peak of the afternoon heat. This temperature drop is vital. It prevents the young succulent's water from evaporating too quickly and keeps its sensitive, shallow roots from scorching in the surface soil, which can otherwise reach temperatures high enough to damage living cells. But the protection goes beyond just the cooling shade. The nurse plant's fallen leaves and organic debris create a thin, natural layer of mulch, enriching the soil with nutrients that the open desert usually lacks. This mulch helps retain every precious drop of dew and the occasional splash of rain, holding moisture close to the seedling's roots for just a little longer. Furthermore, the tangled, often thorny branches of the nurse shrub provide a physical barrier, a natural fortress that protects the tender, water-filled seedling from being trampled or eaten by wandering animals. As you lie there, perhaps you can visualize this small, protected seedling nestled in the soft, cool shade of its protector. Imagine it resting there, shielded from the elements, growing at its own incredibly slow, patient pace. It is a quiet image of safety and care. Just as the seedling is held within the protective embrace of the nurse plant, you are held by the comfort of your bed, shielded from the world outside. There is no rush. There is only the steady, calm rhythm of life and the cooling peace of the shade. For decades, the young succulent will remain under this protection, slowly building its strength. Eventually, it may even outgrow its nurse, its thick green columns rising high above the branches that once shielded it, becoming a protector in its own right. This cycle of nurturing is not unique to one corner of the earth. It is a strategy employed by life across the globe. From the high-altitude plateaus of the Andes to the ancient red sands of the Australian outback, the concept of the desert garden repeats itself in various forms, adapting to the specific whispers of the land. These arid landscapes are scattered across every continent, each with its own unique personality and its own specialized cast of resilient characters, all waiting for the sun to set and the cool air to return. As we look beyond our immediate moonlit garden, we see that these patterns of survival are etched into the very crust of our planet, repeating in various dialects of dust and stone across the globe. Each desert has its own signature, a unique way of dancing with the heat and the wind. In the Sonoran Desert of North America, where our journey began, life is lush and diverse, fueled by two distinct rainy seasons that paint the landscape in shades of sage and emerald. But if we travel south, deep into the heart of South America, we find the Atacama. This is often cited as the driest non-polar place on Earth. In some parts of this high-altitude plateau, the soil is so arid and the air so thin that weather stations have gone decades without recording a single drop of measurable rainfall. It is a landscape so alien and still that scientists often use it to test rovers destined for the surface of Mars. Yet, even here, in the cracks of the salt-encrusted Earth, life waits with a patience that defies our human understanding of time. Across the vast Atlantic, on the southwestern coast of Africa, lies the Namib Desert. It is one of the oldest deserts in the world, a place where towering orange dunes meet the cold, crashing waves of the ocean. Because it is so ancient, the life found here has had millions of years to perfect its relationship with the environment. In the Namib, the primary source of life is not the rain, which is vanishingly rare, but a thick, ghostly fog that rolls in from the sea during the quiet hours of the early morning. This mist drapes over the dunes like a soft, damp blanket, providing a fleeting window of hydration for those clever enough to catch it. Consider the Namib desert beetle, a tiny but remarkable architect of survival. When the fog rolls in, this beetle climbs to the very crest of a sand dune and tilts its body forward, standing almost on its head. Its back is covered in a specialized texture of microscopic bumps and troughs. The bumps catch the tiny droplets of water from the air, while the smooth, waxy troughs funnel that moisture directly down into the beetle's mouth. It is a slow, rhythmic harvest, a drink born from the air itself. Nearby, half buried in the shifting sands, lives one of the most mysterious plants in the botanical kingdom, the Welwitschia mirabilis. To the casual observer, it might look like a heap of weathered, leathery debris, but it is a masterpiece of endurance. The Welwitschia produces only 2 true leaves in its entire life. These leaves never fall off. They simply continue to grow from the base, centimeter by centimeter, for centuries. Over time, the desert winds split and fray these 2 leaves into many ribbon-like strands, making the plant look like a tangled mound of green and brown. Some of these individual plants are estimated to be over 2,000 years old. Imagine a single living thing that has remained in the same patch of sand, growing its 2 solitary leaves. Since the height of the Roman Empire, it does not rush to flower, it does not strive to grow tall. It simply exists, absorbing the morning fog through its tattered leaves and anchoring itself deep into the earth. It is a witness to the slow grinding gears of geological time. In the presence of such ancient life, the frantic pace of the modern world seems to dissolve. The desert teaches us that there is a profound strength in simply remaining, in breathing with the fog, in rooting into the silence, and in trusting that the resources we need will eventually arrive, even if they come only as a whisper of mist in the dark. This resilience is not a struggle, it is a state of being. As you settle deeper into your own space of rest, you might feel a sense of connection to this enduring stillness. The world outside may change, the seasons may turn, and the centuries may pass, but the core of life remains steady, patient, and profoundly calm. We are part of a long, beautiful lineage of living things that know how to wait for the light. This same quiet strength, this ability to thrive on very little and find peace in the stillness, is something we can carry with us as we drift toward sleep, knowing that we are supported by a world that has mastered the art of patience over millions of years. While the Welwitschia and the giants of the Sonoran seem a world away, many of us find a quiet comfort in bringing a small piece of that desert resilience into our own homes. There is a deep, almost ancient connection between humans and these patient plants. When we place a small jade plant or a cluster of echeveria on a sunny windowsill, we are inviting a different kind of time into our lives, a slower, more deliberate pace that contrasts so beautifully with the rush of our daily routines. We become the guardians of a tiny, contained ecosystem, one that has mastered the art of survival over millions of years. Scientifically, having succulents in our living space offers a unique benefit that many other plants cannot provide. Because they utilize that specialized CAM photosynthesis we explored earlier, they are the perfect companions for a bedroom or a quiet study. While most leafy green plants take in oxygen and release carbon dioxide during the night, succulents continue their work under the cover of darkness. They open those tiny pores, their stomata, while you sleep, drawing in carbon dioxide from the room and helping to purify the air in the stillness of the night. It is as if they're breathing with you, a silent, rhythmic exchange that happens while the house is quiet and the world is at rest. This nocturnal activity makes them one of the few plants that actively improve indoor air quality during the very hours we need it most. There is also a profound psychological calm that comes from tending to a slow-growing garden. In a world that often demands instant results and constant updates, the succulent offers a lesson in the beauty of the long view. You might look at your plant today and see no change from yesterday. You might look again in a week and find it exactly as it was. But beneath that stillness, life is unfolding with incredible precision. The plant is building its strength cell by cell, waiting for the right moment to push out a new leaf or a tiny, delicate flower spike. By observing them, we learn to appreciate the value of being rather than doing. We learn that growth doesn't always have to be loud or fast to be meaningful. This slow, steady presence can be incredibly grounding, acting as a living reminder to slow our own heart rates and settle into the present moment. Even the way we water these plants becomes a meditative ritual. For many succulents, the best way to nourish them is through the soak and dry method, which mimics the natural cycles of the desert. You wait until the soil is completely dry, feeling the parched, dusty texture between your fingers. It feels empty, almost lifeless. But then you provide a deep, thorough watering, letting the water soak all the way through to the roots until the soil is heavy and saturated. You watch as the water disappears into the earth, and over the next few hours, the plant begins to transform. The leaves, which may have looked slightly softened or wrinkled, begin to plump up, becoming firm and vibrant once again. It is a visible, tactile reminder of restoration. After this deep drink, the plant enters a period of quiet digestion, slowly using that stored moisture over the coming weeks. There is no frantic need for more. There is only the peaceful state of having enough. As you lie there now, perhaps you can imagine yourself in that state of having enough. Like the succulent on the windowsill, you have everything you need for this moment. Your environment is safe, your breath is steady, and you are entering your own period of restoration. Just as the plant draws in the cool night air to prepare for the coming day, you are drawing in the stillness of this room, letting it settle into your muscles and your mind. The rhythm of the soak and dry is not unlike the rhythm of our own days. The output of energy followed by the deep necessary soaking in of rest. Allow yourself to be saturated by this quiet. Let the weight of your body be like the heavy, hydrated leaves of a healthy plant, anchored and content. There is no rush to reach the next moment. Like the garden, you are perfectly fine exactly where you are, growing in the silence, breathing with the night. This relationship we share with the desert's flora is more than just decorative. It is a bridge to a more resilient way of being. And as we learn more about how these plants function at a microscopic level, we find that their survival strategies may hold the key to our own future on a changing planet. In the quiet laboratories of the world, scientists are now looking toward the desert with a new kind of reverence. They are peering deep into the microscopic structures of succulent cells, seeking to understand the genetic blueprints that allow these plants to thrive where others wither. This field of arid land biology is not just an academic pursuit. It is a search for the tools that might help sustain life on a warming planet. As global temperatures rise and water becomes a more precious resource in many parts of the world, the desert garden is being reimagined as a living laboratory of resilience. Researchers are particularly fascinated by the DNA of plants like the agave and certain species of hardy succulents. By mapping their genomes, they are identifying the specific genetic switches that control CAM photosynthesis. That remarkable ability to breathe at night and stay sealed during the heat of the day. The goal of many of these scientists is a concept that sounds like science fiction, but is rooted in very real biology. The possibility of transferring these water-saving traits into traditional food crops. Imagine a world where rice, wheat, or corn could be edited to use water with the same extreme efficiency as a cactus. Such an advancement could allow farmers to grow food in regions that are currently too dry to support agriculture, using up to 80% less water than is required today. It is a slow, meticulous process, much like the growth of the plants themselves, requiring years of observation and careful testing. Yet, there is a profound sense of hope in this work. The idea that the ancient wisdom of the desert, evolved over millions of years, might provide the key to our own future food security. When we look at a succulent, we aren't just looking at a decorative object. We are looking at a master class in adaptation. The desert has always been a place of extremes, and because of that, It has forced life to become incredibly creative. In the scientific community, the desert is no longer seen as a barren wasteland, but as a library of survival strategies. Every waxy leaf, every water-storing root, and every light-reflecting spine is a solved problem. By studying how a plant manages to keep its internal temperature cool while the sand around it reaches blistering heats, we learn about thermal regulation. By studying how a seed can wait decades for a single half-inch of rain, we learn about the biology of patience and the preservation of life in a dormant state. As you reflect on this, let your mind drift back from the global scale of science to the intimate stillness of our specific desert garden. The laboratories are far away now, and the complex diagrams of DNA sequences fade into the simple, elegant shadows cast by the moonlight. The desert doesn't need to know its own chemistry to be successful. It simply exists in perfect harmony with its environment. It has already done the hard work of evolving, of testing, and of succeeding. It is a place of profound peace because it has nothing left to prove. Take a slow, deep breath, feeling the air move through you with the same effortless grace as the night breeze moving through the garden. You are part of this world of resilience too. Just as the succulent holds its moisture and its energy with quiet strength, you are holding on to this moment of rest. The world outside may be changing, and the future may hold its own sets of challenges. But here, in the cool safety of the night, there is only the present. The desert is a teacher of many things, but perhaps its greatest lesson is that life is remarkably persistent. It finds a way to endure, to bloom, and to thrive, even in the most unlikely of places. The garden is very still now. The silver-blue leaves of the agaves are bathed in a soft, ethereal glow, and the sand has finally given up the last of its daytime heat. The air is crisp and clean, carrying the faint, earthy scent of dry stone and ancient dust. We have traveled through the biology of these plants, from their waxy skins to their deep-reaching roots, and now we return to the most fundamental aspect of the desert experience, the silence. It is a silence that is not empty, but full, a heavy, velvety quiet that wraps around the garden like a protective blanket. In this space, there is no noise to distract you, no movement to catch your eye. There is only the steady, rhythmic pulse of a landscape that knows how to wait. As you settle deeper into your pillows, allow that desert silence to become your own. Let it fill the spaces between your thoughts, bringing a sense of calm that is as vast and enduring as the dunes themselves. We are entering the final hours of the night, the time when the desert is at its most serene, and the only thing left to do is to let go and listen to the stillness. In these final moments before the night fully gives way to the deepest part of your rest, let's consider the nature of the silence that surrounds us. It is a unique kind of quiet, one that is scientifically distinct from the silence of a meadow or a forest. In a lush woodland, even the slightest movement of air is translated into sound by millions of broad, fluttering leaves. There is a constant low-frequency hum of life, insects, birds, and the rustle of grass. But here, in the succulent garden, the physics of sound change. The air in the desert is remarkably dry, and this low humidity affects how sound waves move. In very dry air, high-frequency sounds, the sharp chirps or high-pitched whistles, are absorbed more quickly by the atmosphere than they are in humid environments. This means that the world naturally filters out the noisy edges of sound, leaving behind a sonic landscape that feels softened and rounded. It is as if the air itself is acting as a gentle acoustic dampener, tucking the world into a quiet, velvet-lined box. When the humidity drops below 15 or 20%, the atmosphere becomes a different medium entirely, one that favors the low, heavy frequencies of the earth rather than the frantic vibrations of the air. Furthermore, the plants themselves contribute to this profound stillness. Think of the physical structure of a succulent or a cactus. They do not have thin, paper-like leaves that vibrate or clap together in the wind. Their bodies are heavy, dense, and stationary. A saguaro or an agave stands resolute even in a steady breeze. The wind might whistle softly as it passes through the complex lattice of a cactus's spines, creating a sound known as aeolian music, but it does not rustle. This lack of foliage noise creates an acoustic space that is incredibly clean. It is a space where there is no echo, no clutter, and no unnecessary vibration. The desert does not speak in whispers. It speaks in the absence of them. When you are in a place this quiet, your own biology begins to respond. Your heart rate naturally slows to match the lack of external stimulation. Your brain, no longer needed to filter out background noise or track moving objects in the periphery, can finally begin to power down its sensory processing centers. In this absolute desert silence, the only rhythm left is the one you carry within you, the slow, steady rise and fall of your chest, and the soft, rhythmic pulse of your own breath. Take a moment now to sink into that silence. Imagine the desert air as a cool, dry weight pressing gently against you, grounding you into your bed. There is nothing you need to hear. There is no message the wind needs to carry to you. The plants are silent, the sand is still, and the stars above are moving in a soundless, eternal arc across the black sky. You are safe in this vacuum of noise, protected by the vast, empty miles of the arid wilderness. As we prepare to enter the final summary of our journey, let the stillness of the desert become the stillness of your mind. You have learned of the resilience, the chemistry, and the geometry of this arid world. But now, the most important lesson is the one found in the absence of words. It is the peace of a landscape that has found its balance and requires nothing more. Feel yourself drifting closer to that state of perfect equilibrium where the boundaries between the garden and your own rest begin to blur. The night is long, the air is clear, and the silence is waiting to carry you the rest of the way into sleep. We have traveled through the anatomy of the desert's most resilient residents, tracing the path of a single drop of water from the parched surface to the very heart of the plant. We felt the cool, waxy touch of the cuticle, that protective shield of epicuticular wax that keeps the precious moisture locked inside against the sun's relentless gaze. We saw the geometry of the rosettes and the spheres, those perfect Fibonacci spirals and rounded forms that minimize the surface area exposed to the heat, creating their own small islands of shade. We delved into the microscopic world of the parenchyma cells, where large vacuoles expand like soft internal balloons, holding life-giving liquid in a thick, mucilaginous embrace. And we waited for the night, just as the plants do. We watched as the stomata, those tiny breathing pores, remained tightly sealed during the heat of the day to prevent even a whisper of evaporation. We saw them open only under the silver light of the moon to take in the cool night air, breathing in silence while the rest of the world slept. We understood the chemical magic of KM photosynthesis, the slow, rhythmic conversion of carbon dioxide into malic acid, a quiet storage of energy that waits for the sun to rise again to complete the cycle of life. Everything we have explored, from the deep tap roots of the mesquite searching for the distant water table to the tiny rain roots of the cactus that spring to life within hours of a storm, all of it points to a singular, beautiful truth. Life is persistent, and it is profoundly patient. These plants do not rush. They do not compete for the loudest voice or the fastest growth. They simply endure, turning the scarcity of the desert into a masterpiece of efficiency and grace. The final fact of our journey is perhaps the most comforting of all. The desert garden never truly sleeps in the way we understand sleep. It does not switch off or disappear. Instead, it exists in a state of infinite patience. It is a slow-motion existence, a life measured not in minutes or hours, but in seasons, decades, and centuries. The saguaro stands for 200 years. The welwitschia survives for 2,000. They are not waiting for something to happen. They are simply being in perfect, unhurried harmony with the dryness, the heat, and the cold. They are the masters of the long wait, the guardians of the stillness. Now, as the moon begins its slow, heavy descent behind the jagged silhouette of the dunes, the shadows in the garden grow long and soft. The silver light is fading into a deep, velvety blue, and the horizon is a smudge of charcoal against the star-flecked sky. The air is perfectly still, carrying only the faint, sweet scent of a night-blooming cereus that has opened its petals for this one night only. The succulents are breathing their slow, nocturnal breath, and you are breathing with them. Your journey through the arid lands is complete. There is no more to learn, no more to see, and no more to hold on to. The desert has shared its secrets of resilience and peace, and now it offers you the greatest gift of all, its absolute, unchanging silence. Close your eyes now and feel the weight of your body sinking into the cool, supportive sand of your dreams. The stars are watching over the garden, and they are watching over you, their light reaching across the vacuum of space to touch the earth with a gentle, ancient glow. You are safe. You are grounded. You are as steady and as peaceful as the ancient plants that surround you. Let the rhythm of the desert night carry you away. Let the coolness of the air soothe your mind. There is only the dark, the stars, and the infinite patience of the garden. Sleep now. Let the silence of the desert be your blanket. Rest deeply with the same quiet strength as the stone-mimicking lithops and the ancient silver-leaved agave. The night is yours. The peace is yours. Good night. Sleep well, silence.